Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
It was mid-May. The weather was too hot for spring. The first thunderstorms had already passed, and the sun was scorching mercilessly, but it had no effect on the golf course. Here, the grass was thick and green, and the whole landscape looked more like a toy playground than a real field. Small plains intertwined with numerous hollows and hills. Tiny patches without grass amazed with their whimsical outlines. Here and there, small groves of a few trees created dense shade. The game had been going on for about 3 hours. 3 young men teased each other and made jokes. "Did she finally convince you to marry her this time?" The tall man with blue eyes asked. "I thought you'd finally give in." "Sergio, I think that even if they drag Tadeo to the registration, he won't be able to handle it and will run away. He's definitely a runaway groom." The second one laughed. "Well, you guys really don't believe in me at all," the short man replied, bending his knees before the swing. He shifted his weight onto the balls of his feet, stretched his arms forward, and created an angle. The swing was precise, and the ball slowly rolled and dropped into the hole. "Wow, Tadeo!" His friends applauded. "I see that after the break, you've improved your form. What did Marina do to you?" Sergio winked at his friend. "She played golf with him," Victor laughed, "probably every night." "I envy you, Tadeo. You're a free man, no wife, no kids. Although I must admit, over the past few years, Marina is the only one who managed to stay with you for about a year. That's a record. So, interrogate me about marrying her." Tadeo looked him in the eyes, "and then, like you guys, I'll walk around and suffer. Maybe my wife is not the only one." Come on," Sergio said with offense, and with a powerful swing, drove the ball into the hole. "That was 100 years ago. We didn't even have kids with Natalia back then, and now I'm very happy. I'm not going anywhere from her." "Yes, we know how you're under her thumb," Victor laughed. "It's strange that she hasn't called you yet. She has a pathological jealousy towards all your friends." "Well, I told her I was going for a massage and asked her not to bother me for 2 hours," Sergio sighed. "You're right, Vico, you're all like a red rag to her. As soon as she finds out that I was with you, she starts lecturing me about how you guys are unserious people and that I need to stay away from you. Well, at least Tadeo, I understand. But what did I do to displease her?" "Wives," Sergio replied with annoyance in his voice. "In the past 7 years, you've already changed your third one." "But it's not my fault that they leave me on their own," Victor said, feeling slight offense. "As soon as they've had their fill of my money and saved up enough for themselves, it's goodbye. But I was lucky with Lucia. I deliberately married a country girl. She loves me so much that she practically worships the ground I walk on. She doesn't need diamonds, expensive clothes, or cars. There's plenty of help at home, and when I come home, she's either polishing the floors or baking her special apple pie. The only downside is that I want children desperately, but the doctor says there's no improvement yet. Vico, how about going abroad? Infertility can be treated there." Tadeo patted his friend on the shoulder. "You have enough money, there's no problem with that." "Tadeo, I've already consulted on this matter," the man sighed. "They offered me to undergo treatment in the fall. I'll go in October." "Of course, go for it," Sergio supported him. "You're only 40. You and Lucia can still have children for another round. Although I'll tell you honestly, I get so tired of them. Sometimes Natalia hints at having another one, and I told her for good this time, enough. Where else do we need to go? We already have 3. Children are like flowers," Tadeo sang and laughed. "So what? You'll have a whole football team. I can imagine the headlines in the newspapers. Wife of the famous millionaire Ivora is pregnant with the 11th child." "Oh, come on." Sergio dropped his club in fear. "Stop cursing me. Are you trying to kill me?" "Ha, strolling around not only without children but without a wife either, and trying to teach us about life," Victor teased Tadeo. 5 hours later, they finished the 18-hole round and, tired, headed to a cafe. Sergio and Victor had been friends for many years. Back in their youth, they tried to start their own business, but it didn't work out for them then. Victor came from a very wealthy family, while Sergio came to conquer capital from a village. When they were around 25, they tried selling sports equipment. Things went well, and a few years later, they had a chain of stores. After that, Victor cooled off towards sports and got into landscape design. He sold his share to Sergio, who continued to work with sports equipment to this day. Tadeo was the youngest of the friends. He joined their company quite by accident. About 10 years ago, they all went on a cruise together. Sergio and Victor were traveling with their families at the time. Tadeo, on the other hand, was still a bachelor. He had a phobic fear of marriage. Or rather, he believed that as soon as he married any woman, he would immediately lose interest in her. But despite this flaw, the friends had been close for many years and couldn't imagine living without their small company. "Guys, let's go fishing," Victor suggested. "I'm already sick of the city, and we'll change the scenery. The season on the East Coast is opening soon." "If it's not for long, I'm in," Sergio supported his friend and looked at Tadeo. "Why are you all looking at me like that?" He got angry. "Here we go again, I'm ruining our friendship, what a scoundrel I am." "Yes, that's exactly it," Victor laughed. "You're our eternal provocateur. So, what do you have in mind this time?" "Well, I met a girl," the man began and stopped. "No." "Again?" His friends exclaimed in unison. "Tadeo, how many times? You already have a whole collection." "What about Marina?" "Well, Marina is something different, but I must consider other options too," he arrogantly declared. "And anyway, you won't understand me. You've already found your soulmates, and I'm going crazy here. So, to prevent that from happening, we're flying to East Coast in June." Victor looked at him sternly. "All right, you've convinced me," Tadeo said reluctantly. "You won't leave me alone now, will you?" He grumbled to himself. The friends had a nice time at the cafe and parted ways around 5 in the evening. "Helia, hello." Tadeo dialed someone's number. "How are you? What are you up to today?" "I'm shopping," a tired voice answered on the other end. "My sister's getting married in a week, so I'm getting ready." "I'm very glad," the man replied cheerfully. "So, after such a successful workday, how about we meet at a cafe?" "Well, okay, let's do it," the girl expressed interest. "Where shall we meet?" Tadeo's friends were right. He had a whole collection of girls for every occasion. Marina was currently considered the leading contender for the role of a wife. Helia, the girl he had recently met, still had an air of mystery around her, which made her seem so attractive. Ida was the only one left from his old flames. They were more like friends, but occasionally they managed to have an interesting romantic evening. There were 3 other girls, but he only dated them when he was in a special mood. In reality, Tadeo himself didn't know how many girls he had had in his life. At first, he thought he might be a playboy of some sort, but over time, he realized it wasn't the case. Tadeo could be loyal and faithful, but he just hadn't met the right woman yet, which is why he kept searching. And lately, he had begun to understand Victor. There were many fortune hunters after his wealth, including Marina. And the man was well aware of it. Deep down in his heart, he envied his friends and really wanted both a family and children, but there were no suitable women around him. Tadeo was only 35, so he wasn't giving up. At 6, he was ready, got into his car, and headed to meet Helia. "I'm so glad to see you," the girl's eyes sparkled. "I'm sorry, I've been busy these past few days, so we couldn't meet." "It's okay. The important thing is that we're together today." He took her hand. "How have you been?" "I missed you so much these past few days," Helia flirtatiously replied. "I've been looking forward to our meeting." "I missed you too, very much," the man smiled. "You didn't tell me your sister is getting married." "To be honest, I even forgot." There's been so much going on, I'm sorry. Ira is very lucky. She's marrying a businessman. I'm so happy for her. Now she'll have a big house, her own car, and everything she wants. The girl sighed heavily. Life hasn't been as kind to me. Why do you think that? Tadeo said in surprise. You're only 23. You've still got a lot of living to do. That's exactly the point. I don't want an ordinary man. Helia looked at him attentively. I know my worth. I want a man with wealth. Tadeo understood perfectly where she was going with this. Lately, it had become difficult to meet girls. They would start selling themselves from the very beginning, and for a high price. Don't worry. I have no doubt that someone like you will be appreciated, he winked at her. Many wealthy men are looking for worthy women. And you? Helia unexpectedly asked, blushing. What kind of woman do you need? Well, I haven't figured that out yet, Tadeo honestly admitted. Looks change. We all grow old someday. She should have a beautiful soul. Do you think that's important? The girl laughed. No one has ever seen a soul. We only live once, so we should live life beautifully. Helia really wanted to invite herself over to Tadeo's place, but he came up with a story that he needed to go see his aunt in the hospital. The same thing again. He scolded himself as he drove away from the girl's house. It's as if I've come to a marketplace. The negotiations didn't go particularly well for her today, he laughed. Vico was right. After so many years of unsuccessful relationships with fortune hunters, he had married a very simple girl. Lucia was genuinely crazy about him, and everyone knew it. You could talk to her about anything. She drove the tractor herself on her village farm, kept cattle, and plowed the field with a tiller. The girl was no fool. Her sharp wit and insight sometimes amazed him. Tadeo remembered how they had met by chance 3 years ago. His friends had gone on a fishing trip to Minnesota. Along the way, they encountered heavy rain that got their jeep stuck. They managed to reach a nearby village and asked for help. At the time, Lucia was 27 and a widow with no children. Go to Lucia, she'll get you out, an old man pointed them in her direction. The men were unsure but decided to follow the old man's advice. A tall, sun-kissed girl appeared in the yard. Oh, lads, how could you wind up in such a mess? She shook her head. All right, wait, I'll get you out. The friends were in shock when she drove out of the gate with a tractor. Show me. Lucia shouted and slowly drove toward the stranger's car. This woman is something, Victor exclaimed in amazement when the girl pulled their jeep out of the mud. She can handle anything. But the story didn't end there. The girl invited the guests in for coffee and treated them to her special pie. After that, Victor was hopelessly in love with her. Vico, are you crazy? Their friends scolded him. She's a country girl. You guys don't understand anything about women, he was offended. Lucia will be mine, and that's final. 3 months later, they had their wedding. Many years had passed, and Victor adored his wife. You could always hear it when they all gathered together. Victor, my darling, you're my sweetheart, his wife showered him with tender words. Sincerity and love shone in her eyes. That's exactly what I want too, Tadeo said aloud. To be loved as a sweetheart, not as a thick wallet. Tadeo returned home late. He had been living alone for a long time. As soon as his father handed over part of the business to him, Tadeo separated himself from it. Senor Ivora, Tadeo's father, had been involved in the tableware manufacturing business all his life. He owned 2 large factories that produced pottery and glassware. Tadeo took charge of the retail stores, of which there were 5. In addition to that, his father handled nationwide distribution. Tadeo settled on the couch, closed his eyes. With his friends, he forgot about everything, but at home, he was overwhelmed by loneliness. He reached for the phone. Mom, hi. Tadeo said. How are you all doing? How's Dad? I'll probably come over to see you in a few days. Hello, my dear, his mother replied joyfully. We're doing well. Of course, come over. We haven't seen you in a long time. Your father will be very happy. All right then. How about next Sunday? Tadeo suggested. Do you have any plans for the weekend? No, dear. We'll be home, come on over. Tadeo hung up the phone, had some coffee, and went to sleep. The next week flew by unnoticed, and Sunday arrived. Tadeo happily drove to his parents' house. Hi, son, his father embraced him. How are you? It's been a while since you visited. I've missed you. Dad, hi. You know how it is, always busy, Tadeo justified himself. What can you be busy with? His father said with annoyance in his voice. When will you introduce us to Marina? We're hoping that this time we'll finally be lucky and get a daughter-in-law and then grandchildren. Dad, please, don't start, Tadeo said unhappily. I'm tired of this bachelor life too. I want a family as well, but no one seems to fit the role. Not even Marina? His mother asked in surprise. It seemed like things were serious between you two. Not even her, his son sighed. I'm not entirely sure about her. Mom, you married Dad when he had nothing, and they all want everything handed to them on a silver platter. Can you really love someone like that? You're right about that, son, Senor Ivora sighed. Your mother went through so much with me. At the beginning, nothing was going well at all. And the debts we had. You can't even imagine. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Tadeo scratched his head. And what if I lose everything tomorrow or get sick? Will that be the end of love? Tadeo, why don't you meet someone online? Senora Ivora suggested. Maybe you'll have better luck there. Mom, do you know what kind of ads are out there? He laughed. Looking for a man for a serious relationship and starting a family without bad habits, and he should be well off. Willing to relocate to your area. What's that all about? Well, they might as well just say it in plain words. I'll marry a wealthy man without any problems. He has to provide for me. I won't work, but I'll spend his money. That would be more honest. But they want to sell themselves while also having demands on their future husband. And not a single word about who they are. Yes, and not a word about love, his mother said sadly. No romance, just pragmatic calculation. All right, let's go. I'll show you something, his father said mysteriously and took his son by the hand. They walked into the garden and headed towards a large lawn. It was clear that some work had been done there. Wow. You have mini golf now, his son laughed. I really like it. Many years ago, Senor Ivora tried golf for the first time, and it was love at first swing, so to speak. He passed this love on to his son, and his son, in turn, infected his friends with it. Tadeo's father already had a large golf course, but he wanted a small practice area at home for perfecting his strokes. I really like this curve here, his son pointed to some small hills. You can get an interesting shot here. Yes, I've tried it already, his father agreed. I want to practice the most difficult shots from different angles so that I can use that skill on the main course in any situation. We'll come to your place to play golf sometime, Tadeo said. We prefer playing at your place with the guys rather than at the club. You're welcome, his father happily agreed. I'd be happy to join you. On that day, the parents and their son talked a lot, discussed health matters, and future plans. Then they had a swim in the pool. The water was already warm. Well, Mom, Dad, it was really nice to see you. Tadeo hugged his parents goodbye. You have a good life here, he sighed. Son, if you want, you can move in with us, his father offered for the umpteenth time. It would be more fun for us. Dad, thanks, but I've gotten so used to my solitude that I don't think I could live with anyone anymore, Tadeo honestly replied. I love you very much, but I've become so accustomed to it that I'm afraid I just couldn't handle it anymore. Well, all right, Sonora Ivora agreed. If you ever feel overwhelmed, we'll be here waiting for you. Tadeo jumped into his car and headed home. It was already getting dark. He had some work to do tomorrow, and he planned to go to the office, but the weather was so nice that he decided to drive around a bit more. Tadeo drove around the outskirts and parked his car in a square. People were walking back and forth, and the youth were out for a stroll. He walked around a bit and headed towards the crowd. What's happening there? He thought with curiosity. Probably some street musician playing. He was approaching, but there was still no music to be heard. After a few steps, he heard someone's voice. It seemed like a child's voice. He pushed through the crowd and saw a little girl. She looked to be about 10 years old. Her eyes were half closed as she loudly recited something. Is she reciting someone else's poems or something? Tadeo thought and listened closely. I don't recognize these. Maybe they're from modern authors? The little girl recited another poem, and the crowd applauded her. Someone from the crowd approached and tossed some coins into the box in front of the child. Wonderful poems, remarked some elderly man. Bravo! The girl blushed and lowered her head. She was dressed in an old sweater and dirty pants. Her hair was braided in two pigtails that looked like they hadn't been washed in a while. She thanked everyone, felt for the box with her hands, picked up a stick, and walked away. Is she homeless? Crossed Tadeo's mind. Although she seems to be going somewhere. Maybe she has a place to stay. He didn't want to dwell on the girl and quickly moved away to continue his stroll around the square. Tadeo was almost back to his car when his phone rang. Hi, my love. Marina's voice rang out. Are we not going to meet today? Marina, hello, he said wearily. Let's meet tomorrow. I've had a busy day, and I need to be at work early tomorrow morning. Tadeo, I've missed you so much, she pouted. It seems like you're always busy with something, and you have no time for me. Marina, we just got back from Dubai a little over a week ago, he retorted, annoyed. So, I have things to take care of right now. All right then, see you tomorrow, she playfully said. I'll be eagerly waiting for you. Tadeo let out a deep sigh and got into his car. The sun had nearly set, and he drove home as quickly as possible. The next day turned out to be very busy for him. He had to meet with his staff. They had to purchase new inventory, and some shipments had already arrived from his father's pottery factory, so he had to deal with the paperwork. He didn't want to meet Marina, and he was genuinely tired, but she insisted. Do you not love me at all? She theatrically cried. I miss you so much, but it seems like you couldn't care less about me. Marina, please stop it, Tadeo snapped. I have so many stores to manage. Do you think things just work themselves out? Tadeo, what if I move in with you? She cautiously suggested. We've been together for almost a year now. It's time to start a serious relationship. Besides, if we love each other, why should we live apart? Not right now, he replied, looking displeased. Marina, I understand everything, but I'm not ready for that yet. But wouldn't it be nice for you? She persisted. You'd come home, and your wife would be waiting for you, full of love and care. Darling, I love you. If you want, we can even have a wedding. Tadeo was taken aback. He realized that he and Marina had been dating for quite some time, but he had never pictured himself marrying her. Darling, aren't we living well enough? He tried to steer clear of the topic. Why create all these problems? As soon as you move in with me, unnecessary troubles will start, and you don't want to part with me, do you? Of course not, she looked at him with a penetrating gaze. I love you so much that I won't survive our separation. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Why do we need all these problems? The man smiled. Let's leave everything as it is. Well, Tadeo, I want to be sure of your serious intentions. Marina got angry. Choose whether you marry me or I leave. The woman stood up demonstratively. I'm sorry, but I can't do that right now, Tadeo replied. Why all this drama? Marina turned and left. The man sat in the cafe for a while longer and called the waiter. He didn't like this whole situation. He realized that he was lying to himself and to Marina. Maybe this will be better for both me and her? He sighed and left the cafe. He had gotten used to Marina, and he felt sorry to part with her, but he no longer wanted to continue this game. How about taking a train next time? Tadeo suggested when they met with friends again. Tadeo, what's wrong with you? You might as well suggest going by car. Sergio got angry. Are you lacking romance? Sergio, why are you so angry today? Victor looked at him in surprise. Did something happen to you? See, it's all because of you, he muttered. You got me all worked up. You should have kept quiet. What happened? Tell us finally, Tadeo said. Natalia is pregnant again, Sergio said, displeased. It's all because of you and your football team. Sergio, that's actually great news. Congratulations. Victor rejoiced. You're being foolish. You're blessed with such happiness. How much longer can this go on? Sergio jumped up in anger. She's like a breeding sow, I swear. Well, what's wrong with you? Tadeo laughed. You have plenty of money. Your kids won't go hungry, they're all supervised by governesses. You know how loud they are? The man persisted in his fury. You can't get away from them. There are 10 rooms in the house, and they're everywhere. Well, that's right. They need to run and jump, Victor laughed. Don't you play with them? I do, the friend angrily replied, but not for 12 hours a day. I'm tired from work, I come home, and it's a real zoo there. I don't know how the poor governesses handle them at all. I can only dream of that, Victor said sadly. I really want children. I'm not just okay with one, I wouldn't even refuse 4. When Natalia gives birth, I'll bring one to you, Sergio scolded. She wants to drive me crazy. All right, that's clear now. How are we going to get to East Coast? Tadeo asked. Of course, by plane, the friends said in unison. There will be romance and adventure in East Coast, but not on the road. Tickets were purchased for June 6th. The fishing season will already be open. Friends arranged to meet at the airport. I almost ran late, Sergio panted, extending his hand. Hello, friends. So, what did they tell you? That Natalia is expecting twins? Tadeo laughed. Tadeo, shut your mouth, scolded his friend. Every time you open it, everything comes true. I'll definitely hang myself then. Did Natalia not let you go fishing? Victor laughed. Or did she start having morning sickness? Yes, the man was angry. She suddenly wanted. Lord, I even forgot what that thing is called. Well, what do they usually want? Probably herring or oranges, Victor chuckled. No, not mine. She wanted artichokes, he said angrily. She's never eaten them in her life, never even seen them, and now bring me some, and that's it. I ran around the stores like a fool. They almost pointed their finger at their temple at me, and she's having a tantrum, crying, can't calm down. Well, it definitely means there will be twins, Tadeo tried to sound serious. Artichokes are always a sign of twins, he couldn't hold back and burst into loud laughter. Be quiet. Sergio yelled at him. If there really are twins, I'll leave them at your doorstep. They'll have an adoptive father. Tadeo, I suggest we share, Victor intervened. Let's figure it out between the two of us. They laughed so hard that they almost burst their stomachs. Finally, a boarding announcement was heard, and an hour and 20 minutes later, they were already in East Coast. I barely had time to close my eyes, Victor said, and we're already here. That's why I love East Coast. You can come here for just one day. The friends planned to go fishing on the lake and then head to the river. If it weren't for these mosquitoes, Sergio complained, I would have run away from my Natalia here. But now it doesn't matter, whether she eats me at home or they eat me here, there's no difference. But you'll die a hero, Tadeo laughed. We'll give you a posthumous star with the inscription, Honor and Glory to the Father of Many. All over my dead body, the man angrily retorted. I'm going to hook you right now. I assure you, I'm so nasty that not even the fish will bite me, Victor joked. No, we'll have to come up with something more cunning for you, Sergio grumbled. I'll strip you naked and tie you to a tree. You'll make an excellent treat for the mosquitoes. Nothing will work with you, my friend, the man replied. You forgot that all women are crazy about me? By the way, only female mosquitoes bite, but they'll be kissing me. Yeah, wait. They'll devour you with all your insides, Victor laughed. So your flirting won't work with these. The friends spent 3 unforgettable days. Sergio was mainly lucky with perch. Victor caught a huge catfish, and Tadeo had a full net of smelts. They grilled the catfish on the spot and decided to pickle the perch and smelts. After golf and beer, this will be such a treat. Victor rejoiced like a child. They had 1 more day left. They were flying out the next evening. It was already late when Tadeo's phone rang. Tadeo, why didn't you call me all this time? Marina said through tears. Well, you said it yourself, we're done, the man replied in astonishment. I can't live without you, she cried. I love you. Can we meet now? Well, I'm not at home, actually, he replied calmly. We're on a fishing trip in East Coast. When will you be back? Marina asked hopefully. Please, come to me right away. We're flying back tomorrow evening, Tadeo replied. Let's meet the day after tomorrow. Tadeo hung up the phone, and his friends looked at him attentively. Finally, Victor couldn't hold back. Probably, all this time she was counting your millions and realized that she shouldn't let go of such a golden fish, he sighed. It's the same story with you, my friend, Victor said with annoyance. At first, I thought it was just bad luck with Ida, my first wife, but when Anna turned out to be exactly the same, I started to wonder. So when I married Rose for the penultimate time, it was just hope, which, of course, didn't pan out. Are they all like that? Tadeo exclaimed angrily. There must be Natalius and Lucius somewhere. Why is it that I'm so unlucky? Tadeo, calm down, Sergio patted his shoulder. Your happiness will come when the time is right. Maybe it will be a woman you never even thought of. But when you fall in love with her, you won't want to live without her. Do such women even exist? He whispered. I really want to love like that, but I can't seem to do it. Maybe I just can't love at all. Come on, that's nonsense, Sergio reassured his friend. You're surrounded by nobody but hunters. They don't need you. Look at ordinary women around you. You know, I don't even believe in that. I think even a little girl, take her, for example, around 10 years old, will already dream of marrying a rich prince on a white horse. Give money to any of them, and they'll spend it all right away, only to ask for more later. I disagree with you, Victor argued. Not all girls and women are the same. Want to bet on it? Tadeo jumped up. I'll find someone, even the most ordinary or the poorest. Anyway, she'll spend all the money right away. Let's do it, Sergio extended his hand. How much money do you want to bet? Let it be a 200,000, Tadeo's eyes gleamed. If I win, you'll give me a new car, and if I lose, then you'll get married in the same month, Victor suggested. Well, do you agree? Okay, the man laughed. Only if I lose, which I strongly doubt, I'll choose my future wife myself. Agreed, Sergio shook their hands. We'll start as soon as we get back and have some fun. Sounds good, Tadeo winked at him. I'll show you such a show that even a little girl won't resist my money. Maybe you should offer money to Marina after all? Victor chuckled. With her, you definitely won't lose. No, Marina doesn't count, the man protested. For the sake of the experiment, we'll choose someone outside. I'll need to think about who that might be. Tadeo really wanted to relax after returning, but that same evening, Marina called him. She had been crying the whole time and wanted to meet him, but he refused. The next day, they agreed that he would come to her place for lunch. Tadeo, my love. Marina rushed to him. Come in quickly, I've been waiting for you. She looked stunning. It was evident that she had prepared meticulously. She wore a slightly revealing dress, had a perfect hairstyle, and on the table there was wine and beautifully arranged appetizers. So, shall we make peace? Marina said cheerfully and poured wine into the glasses. Marina, I'm behind the wheel. Besides, I won't be here for long. I need to run in a few minutes. Marina became cautious. She couldn't afford to lose him and used her most sophisticated seductive techniques. She believed that she had almost succeeded when Tadeo's phone rang. Yes, I'll be there soon, he answered someone on the phone. Marina, sorry. Let me come to you later. We have a little emergency. Damn it! The woman screamed in anger when he left. You won't get away from me. I won't let you slip through my fingers. I'll marry you myself. She sat down on the bed. Marina had expended so much effort to lure Tadeo into her trap, but she realized that it wouldn't work with him. He did give her some money and jewelry, of course, but that wasn't enough for her. Once, Marina almost married a wealthy man just like him, but her friend took him away, so over the years, she had become cold and acted very cautiously. But Tadeo was different. It took so long to play the love game with him that the woman was already tired of it. She hoped that after her ultimatum, Tadeo would come to her and finally propose, but Marina was mistaken. He didn't even call her. You won't escape from me, no matter what, her eyes sparkled. Tadeo rushed out of Marina's apartment and quickly made his way to his car. He started the engine and pressed the gas pedal lightly. Thank God Sergio called me, he rejoiced. If he hadn't asked me what to do with the fish, she would have definitely seduced me, and I don't want that. Tadeo simply drove around the city and parked his car in one place. He got out and started walking downhill. He didn't even notice how he ended up in a square he was familiar with. There were few people around. Near one monument, he noticed a small, lonely figure. The same girl was reciting someone's poems. Who wrote this? Tadeo couldn't help but ask. Is it from a classic or something contemporary? The girl looked embarrassed and didn't answer. She caught her breath and started reading again. She's quite peculiar, he thought to himself. Maybe she's even deaf? He stood there for a little while longer. The poems were truly touching, filled with pain and beauty. The man dropped a banknote into the donation box. Curious, what would she do? Tadeo thought. Could she spend that much money in a month? I wonder at what age this hunting instinct for money awakens in them. Exactly. I'll give her 200,000. Let's see when these women develop a craving for money. I'm even sure she'll spend it all before a month is up. She could have bought a house somewhere. Absolutely. I'll definitely win this bet, he laughed. The following weekend, the friends gathered in a field near Tadeo's father's place. Unfortunately, Tadeo had some work to attend to, but he promised to join them later. So, how's Natalia doing? Tadeo said with a chuckle. Did she like the artichokes? Laugh all you want, Sergio sulked. But they turned out to be delicious. She took one bite and wanted to throw them away. Her artichoke craze disappeared. So, I enjoyed them with pleasure. Now our problem is that we want durian. Oh, it's so stinky, yuck. Victor grimaced. I tried it once in Taiwan, but as soon as I caught a whiff of it, I almost threw up. Yeah, I told her all that. But she just says I want and that's it, the man grumbled. I even banned her from watching all those culinary and travel channels. It's impossible. I'm afraid to think about what she'll ask for next. Yep, it's probably twins. And it seems they're boys, Tadeo teased his friend. I'll hang myself on the same day, Sergio replied. I'd rather live through her pregnancy. Turns out we didn't know what pregnancy cravings were until now. She didn't even have severe morning sickness, but now this. Guys, I have some good news for you, Tadeo said, entering a bunker. Regarding our bet, I'm going to give $1 million to a poor girl around 10 to 12 years old. Well, then you'll definitely win, Sergio waved his hand. It would have been better if you gave it to Marina. She would at least have held onto it for a while, close to her heart, he laughed. Let it be, Victor supported his friend. Poor girl, as you wish. On the contrary, if she has no money, she won't even know what to do with it. I agree. Oh, Marina didn't get lucky, Sergio continued. She had serious plans for you, you know, and you ruined everything. Yeah, she tried to seduce me the other day, Tadeo complained. If it weren't for you, Sergio, with your fish problem, she would have definitely succeeded. Thanks for calling me on time. In the distance, a golf cart appeared. Tadeo's father had returned home, and he was eager to play around with them. Victor was currently leading, with the fewest points today. They had a little way to go, so Senor Ivora waited for them in the shade of some low trees, and then they played another round, but this time, all four of them played together. So, gentlemen, Tadeo's father said, are we placing bets, or are we just playing for fun? How about betting on dried fish? Sergio suggested. If you win, we'll give you ours. I salted it with so much love. And if you lose, then you treat us to sturgeon with beer. 1 against 3? You guys are not holding back, he laughed. Well, okay, I agree. Gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. Did I decode the word golf correctly? Yes. The men exclaimed in unison, and the showdown between them began. The sun was setting as the round neared its end. Tadeo's father was winning. Senor Ivora, that's not fair, Sergio complained. The three of us can't beat you. You probably have some sensors there that only respond to you. Yep, just admit that you're feeling sorry for your fish, he laughed and adjusted his cap. Well, this last shot is dedicated to my beloved perch and smelt. And you owe me beer. Despite losing the bet, the friends returned home in high spirits. Everyone had a good time. How are you going to give her the money? Sergio asked curiously as they got out of the car. Yeah, the child might think you're some kind of scammer, Victor said worriedly. We need to find a way to approach her, not just hand her a bag full of money out in the open. Well, I'll tell her I want to help her, Tadeo calmly replied, that I've been listening to her poems for a long time and I like them. Let's approach her together first, and then we'll decide, he suggested and got out of the car. It was Sunday, and people were strolling around. Giving a young girl a large sum of money in broad daylight was risky, so the friends decided to first assess the situation and then decide on their next steps. They slowly made their way towards the monument. Several people were already gathered, listening attentively to the girl. The men watched for a while. Her poems are really good, Sergio whispered. Probably from some classic. Her voice is powerful, it gives me goosebumps, Victor agreed. The young girl recited a few more poems and then stopped. Someone clapped and, thanking her, dropped some money into the collection box. The girl took a sip of water and rested for a moment. Well, this won't work, Victor finally said. We need to catch her in the evening. Also, we can't hand her a bag full of money in front of people. Let's follow her to where she lives or her home, and then give her the money. Otherwise, someone might take it from her. Yeah, that's true, Tadeo scratched his head. So what do we do now, stand here until evening? She left around 8 last time, and it's only 6 now. Well, we'll wait, Sergio sighed. A bet is a bet. And I really don't want to go home. There, Natalia with her tantrums, and the kids screaming. Let's go to a cafe for now, Tadeo suggested, and return here around 7. She'll still be here. The men left the girl and went to a cafe nearby on the square. Over a cup of coffee, they reminisced about how they had met and laughed about funny stories from their lives. It was almost 7 when they returned to the car. Everything would have been fine, but there was no one around the monument. Damn it! Tadeo cursed. The girl left earlier today. What do we do now? If only she knew what happiness awaits her, she'd wait here for us until morning, he said arrogantly. Maybe it's still Marina? Sergio sighed. She certainly won't refuse. Oh, forget about her, the friend cursed. She has everything already, an apartment, a car. She just doesn't want to work. She wants to live all-inclusive. I'd rather help this child. The friends decided to try their luck again the next day. They were already on the square around 6. This time they parked the car closer. The men got out and listened to the girl recite poems for about half an hour. Then she picked up her box and, feeling for her stick, headed somewhere. Let's follow her, Victor whispered. Just be careful, blind people have excellent hearing. They cautiously followed the girl. It seemed like she suspected something. At the end of the street, she stopped and turned to them. Who are you? What do you want? She asked with alarm in her voice. Why are you following me? Damn it! I warned you, Victor hissed. Don't be afraid, girl. We won't harm you. We want to help you. We were just afraid to give you the money on the square because there are too many people around, he explained. The men approached the girl. She was trembling with fear and clutched her box to her chest. Please, don't touch me, she cried. If you want, take the money. We don't want anything from you, Sergio reassured the girl. We wanted to give you the money ourselves. We want to help you. There's just too much of it, and we didn't want anyone to notice. Take this, Tadeo handed her a bag of money. Just be careful. Hide it at home. It'll be enough for food and clothes. We are wealthy people, so it's nothing for us. The little beggar nervously fumbled with her hands. She felt the bag they gave her, said thank you, and left. What's your name? Tadeo called after her. Do you have a name? Viola, she paused for a moment and quickly walked away. It seems we did it, Victor wiped the sweat from his face. God, I never thought I'd be running after someone to give away a big sum. It used to be people running after me. Yeah, an unforgettable experience, Tadeo agreed. I feel sorry for the child. She was so frightened that I wanted to hug her. Poor girl. Does she really live alone? Maybe we should have escorted her? You saw how scared she was. She definitely didn't want that, Victor said with annoyance. My heart ached for her. We live without problems, without need, but she doesn't even have enough for bread. The friends returned home without much of a mood. On one hand, they felt like they had done a good deed. On the other, they realized that this wasn't just a game. The girl looked so miserable that their compassion was awakened, and they couldn't shake off the feeling for a long time. Guys, I want to track her down, Tadeo suddenly said. And what if gypsies are making her beg, or she has some kind of mad father? It's not just about my money, I'm worried about the child now. Yeah. Who knows where she lives and with whom, his friend supported him. Maybe she's not even from around here. Maybe some stepfather is forcing her. I think you're right, Sergio said. And at the same time, you might find out if they're keeping her here illegally, and the girl actually has a home, she was just kidnapped from there. For several days, Tadeo couldn't get Viola out of his mind. He had been busy at work during these days, but he decided to approach the girl again tomorrow. He hoped to see that she was alive. Maybe she took the money with her parents, and they've already left, Tadeo thought. On one hand, he was afraid that his money would only make things worse for the child. On the other hand, he hoped that the money would help the child and her family. Victor and Sergio were also eagerly awaiting the continuation of the story. Tadeo couldn't hold back and told his father everything. Well done, son, he heard in the receiver. But it would be much better if you did it from the heart, not because you had a bet. Right now, the child is being treated as a bargaining chip. I know it looks that way from the outside, sighed his son, but I'm genuinely concerned about this child. I worry about this girl. Tomorrow, I want to see what happened to her. Maybe I can find out where she lives. Then I can make sure if what I did helped. All right, son, his father replied. Do what you think is necessary. Okay, let's go to sleep. Good night, Christina said, stroking the child's hand. The girl closed her eyes, and tears streamed from them. She understood that she should be happy because spring had come, and now it would be easier for them, but unlike Viola, Christina was an adult, so she understood that someday winter would come again, and they would freeze from the cold. The girl remembered her mother and father. Christina, come on, hurry up, her father urged her. Or you'll be late for school. Christina finished her breakfast without enthusiasm, took her backpack, and slowly walked to the car. If only I didn't have to go to school, then, she said with annoyance. I would spend the whole day writing poems. At the age of 8, a young genius awakened in Christina, and she tirelessly wrote something all the time. At first, her parents didn't attach much importance to it, but one day when her mother was cleaning her room and found her diary, she was shocked. Leandro, you have to read this, she said in amazement. This is simply amazing. Her husband took the notebook in his hands and started reading. His eyes widened more and more. Finally, he stopped and looked at his wife. Irma, she's talented, he said. How can a child write such poems? When Christina turned 15, she was already a laureate of many awards. Her parents didn't stand in her way. They did everything they could to allow her to develop in poetry. Christina was happy. The only thing she simply hated was school. More precisely, she didn't like some of the teachers who tried with all their might to belittle her and devalue her talent. Christina entered the capital's Literary Institute. She was in her 3rd year when all this happened. The girl fell into a deep sleep. Viola got up early. Despite her poor eyesight, she tidied up by touch, cleaned up after her sister, and prepared breakfast. The old room was always dimly lit. Christina lay near a small window. She needed light to write. Viola, how do you like this one? Christina read a new quatrain. I want to finish it today, and tomorrow we can teach it. It's beautiful, Christina, Viola smiled. All your poems are beautiful. At first, I feel like crying, but then I feel joy. They have our father's radiant face, our mother's caring hands, you, and me in them. They had tea with bread, and after cleaning everything up, Viola left her dwelling. If Viola could see, she would be horrified by where they lived. It was an old, dilapidated house. Its residents had left it 7 years ago. Since then, nothing had changed here. Viola and Christina lived in the basement. First, it was safe there. Secondly, there was a heating main passing through here, so it was slightly warmer in winter. The small window also gave Christina the opportunity to work. Surprisingly, a long time ago, they discovered that the outlet, which had some technical purpose, was working. So since then, they always had hot tea. One day, Viola found a kettle on the garbage heap. Well, she didn't know what it was and brought it to show Christina. The girl was very happy because it worked. It was their 2nd winter. After this incident, things got a little better for them. The girl took her stick and slowly walked to the square. Many people liked her poems and how she recited them. She and Christina had already saved enough money for an apartment, but because of Viola's vision problems, her money was often stolen. Some people, under the pretext of giving her 5 pennies, took 1 or even more bills from her box. Also, the local store often cheated her, so they barely had enough for bread and some simple groceries. Viola reached the square, tapped with her stick, and felt the steps in front of the monument. She carefully climbed onto the platform, placed her box in front of her, and began to recite. Since her vision was weak, the child had learned to sense the presence of people over time, and she was never wrong about it. Thunder rumbled, and rain was approaching. The girl took the box and hid in her shelter, which was a basement of the nearest building. The door inside was closed, but the steps leading downstairs were under a canopy, so the rain didn't reach there. The first drops hit the plastic roof, and a real downpour followed a few seconds later. Viola listened attentively to the rain. It seemed to her that her mother's voice was hiding behind it. Christina, of course, tried to replace her, but because she couldn't walk, she couldn't provide all the necessary care for the child. Someday I won't have to hide from the rain in old basements, she thought, because I'll have a home. There, together with Christina, we will peek out of the window and put our palms out to catch the rain. The girl sighed. Her older sisters said they had been homeless for more than 5 years already. Viola couldn't even remember their home. Even then, her vision was not very good. She could sometimes see very clearly, but with time, all of it disappeared, and the torn pieces of different pictures in her eyes were replaced by complete darkness. She couldn't even remember her father's face, but there were few such moments in her memories. Viola listened attentively to the rain. It seemed to her that her mom's voice was hiding behind it. Of course, Christina tried to replace her, but because the girl couldn't walk, she couldn't provide Viola with all the necessary care. The rain stopped, and Viola headed back towards the monument. She felt that several people were approaching her today. Someone put a piece of paper in her pocket. "Please, I need bread, for sausages, and cookies." She handed the money to the saleswoman at the end of her workday. "Here you go," an elderly woman handed her the groceries. She quickly tucked a 100 note into her pocket. "Will there be change?" The child extended her hand. "There's not enough here as it is." "I gave you the sausages at my expense," the saleswoman said insincerely. The girl thanked her and left. She was already nearing home when a heavy rain started again. Viola got soaking wet. She changed into some rags and took out her clothes and some of Christina's belongings under the rain. That's how they did their laundry. After the rain, Viola rubbed the clothes a bit, squeezed them, and hung them on some rope. "Well, let's eat," the girl rejoiced. "Today I brought sausages." They had a good dinner, and the child started to learn new poems. And again, night came to their dwelling. Today, Viola didn't feel like talking, and she quickly fell asleep. Christina opened her eyes. During the day, she rarely thought about her parents. She often felt inspired during this time, and she wrote. But when night fell, she suffered greatly from loneliness, from what had happened to them. "I don't know if this is due to birth trauma or a doctor's mistake," the doctor answered when a man asked him why Viola had vision problems. "Unfortunately, the only way to fix this is through surgery." "I agree," her father rejoiced. "I'll pay for the operation, just help her see normally." "It's not that simple, Senor Diestro. It will take at least 5 years, the doctor said, looking at him. "We can't perform the operation earlier." 5 years? Her father exclaimed in shock. "Oh my God. So we have to wait for over 3 more years?" Due to complicated childbirth, Viola had poor vision from birth. After his wife's death, Leandro devoted all his time and attention to his daughters. In general, Senor Diestro was a very compassionate person. Despite a difficult childhood, the boy grew up to be kind. He never knew his father, but as long as he could remember, his mother constantly drank. When Leandro was a teenager, his only dream was to help his mother quit drinking. Back then, he didn't understand that it was simply impossible. One day, a man came to their house. The teenager immediately sensed that he was drunk. He introduced himself as his mother's new husband and stayed in their house. A few days later, Evelina, his stepfather's daughter, appeared in their house. She was a withdrawn and secretive girl, but she often set up Leandro, and her father would beat him. "She's your sister," his stepfather yelled, and from his drunkenness, the boy almost lost consciousness. "She's a girl. You should always yield to her." So he lived, unwanted by anyone. And when he turned 16, his stepfather drowned in the lake while he was too drunk. His mother continued to drink incessantly. In a strange way, she became close to Evelina, calling her daughter. She didn't even acknowledge Leandro. The girl was a couple of years older than him. When she turned 18, she ran away with some married man from the neighborhood. Leandro's mother grieved deeply. At first, she even quit drinking, but one day, while he was working the night shift, she got so drunk that she left a cigarette unattended. Everything burned down, even their old barn. The young man struggled for a long time, living, one could say, under the open sky, but he was taken in by a neighbor, Uncle David. He took Leandro as his own and loved him like a son. Several years later, Christina's father went to the capital for work, and he stayed there. Uncle David had a daughter, Julia, whom Leandro loved very much. A few years later, he married her, and she moved in with him. Leandro turned out to be a clever young man. He started as an assistant to a household appliance repairman, then mastered electronics and opened his own small business. A few years later, they bought a house in the nearby area. At that time, Christina was already going to school. They lived modestly, but not poorly. They had everything they needed. To the great surprise of her parents, the girl's talent emerged at a very young age, and they encouraged it in every way. When she was 14, to Senor Diestro's joy, Julia became pregnant again. It was an event they had been eagerly anticipating for a long time. Christina dedicated poems to her younger sister. She wrote about her all the time. "How I wish I could turn back time," Christina whispered through tears. "Mom, Dad, I love you so much." At some point, she promised her already deceased parents that she would take care of Viola, and she kept her word as best as she could. It rained again at night, and the girl finally fell asleep. She often had the same dream. She stood on some bridge, with no one around. Suddenly, someone called her. The girl turned around and saw her parents coming towards her. "Christina, stop it," her mother wiped away her tears. "Unfortunately, we can't stay with you for now, but you won't be alone. We'll send our good friends to help you." "Mom, please don't leave us." The girl cried as her parents began to disappear. "I love you so much." "Your love will come back to you, my dear," her father's voice sounded. "I know he's a good man. I've already told him about you." "Dad, who?" Christina ran after the ghosts. "Who is he?" The girl woke up, wiping the sweat from her face. Christina had seen this dream so many times, but every time, she still felt very strong emotions. "Viola," she said, "have you gotten up already?" "Viola, my dear?" "I'm here, Christina," a child's voice was heard. "I decided to clean up while you're still asleep. I'll make tea now." "Viola, I beg you," her sister said, "if you feel rain, hide immediately. Maybe you'll stay at home today? Let's take a day off." "Christina, don't worry, I'm fine," she felt her sister's hand. "I'll rest in the fall and winter, but for now, the weather is good, and I need to work." Despite her age, Viola was more pragmatic than her older sister. She didn't hope for a miracle much. She understood that if they could raise enough money for the operation, no matter who it was for, her or Christina, they would finally be able to leave this place. It was her most cherished dream. The girl touched the clothes she had hung out. They were still damp from the night rain. "Christina, I'm going," the child shouted and tapped the wall with her stick. Today was Sunday, and Viola had a good day. She felt people standing next to her. Someone kept approaching and dropping coins into her box. By lunchtime, it was very hot, and people dispersed. The girl sat at the foot of the monuments. Suddenly, she felt something soft. "Donut, is that you?" Viola said and petted the homeless dog. She scratched him behind the ears and felt his tail, which was like a coil. It was because of his tail, which resembled a bagel, that the girl called the dog Donut. "Haven't seen you in a while, right?" she asked, feeling the dog's paws in her hands. "Were you busy?" Donut happily barked in response, saying, "Yes." Then he began to place his paws on the girl's hands and nuzzle her face. The girl lovingly stroked him. "You're such a hard worker." The girl laughed. "Always busy, weren't you? Probably running around with your friends in the dumps, huh?" The dog twirled around Viola a bit more, barked, and then ran off. Donut never asked her for treats. Perhaps the dog knew that the girl's life wasn't much different from his, except she had one major disadvantage compared to Donut. She had poor eyesight, and most of the time, she couldn't see at all. Today, Donut came by, Viola happily told Christina when she returned home. "Well, how is he doing?" The girl laughed. "Probably got into trouble with his buddies." "Unfortunately, he didn't answer that question," the girl chuckled. "He always stays silent when I ask him about it. I shouldn't expect to see him again before a week goes by." Christina spent the whole day trying to push thoughts of the past out of her mind, but by nightfall, they had caught up with her even more forcefully. "Dad, someone's here," the girl said, looking out the window. "There's some car parked near us." "I'll go check," her father replied, putting on his autumn jacket. Christina looked out the window. She saw a woman rushing toward her father. She seemed to be crying. The man hugged her and patted her head. Half an hour later, they entered the house together. "Christina, meet your aunt," her father introduced the guest. "Her name is Evelina. She's going through some serious problems right now, so she'll be staying with us for a while." The girl immediately disliked this relative. She had a deceitful, raspy voice. She smoked a lot, but always hid it from Christina's father. When he wasn't around, Aunt Evelina would curse at the children and wave her thick fists at them. After a few months, Christina realized that she couldn't leave this place. "Dad, I can't take it anymore," she cried out. "Either she leaves our house, or I do." "My dear Christina, please, just endure for another month," her father begged her. "She'll get her own place back in a month. She's already submitted all the necessary documents." At that time, Christina was almost 20 years old, and she realized that something was seriously wrong with all of this. Aunt Evelina claimed that her house had been seized due to unpaid loans. She said she couldn't find the money. They had to wait a few weeks for her case to be resolved. "Dad, just a month, no more," Christina said angrily. "She means nothing to you. Stop covering for her." In early December, the day of the operation for Viola was scheduled. Aunt Evelina left in the evening and didn't return until the morning. Where could she be? Her father worried in the morning. "We need to get to the hospital." "Dad, forget about her," Christina replied. "Let's go quickly, or we'll be late." They gathered all their necessary belongings and got into the car. The road was icy. It had snowed with rain overnight, and by morning, everything had frozen. The father carefully drove the car. "Damn it, I'm crawling like a turtle," he cursed. "We're definitely going to be late," the man said in frustration and accelerated. They had driven about 3 kilometers when a small downhill slope appeared in front of them. Due to the icy conditions, the father wanted to slow down, but he couldn't. He then tried to brake, but the brakes didn't work. Senor Diestro attempted to stop the car, but since it was going downhill, its speed only increased. He tried to steer to avoid crashing, but in the end, the car gained such speed that it became uncontrollable. Christina couldn't remember what happened next. She felt a strong impact and pain in her spine. Her father died on the spot, and Christina and Viola were taken to the hospital. The girl had a broken arm, and her older sister was severely injured. They were discharged a month later. They had barely recovered from the shock of their father's death when their lives turned into a real nightmare. Aunt Evelina took guardianship over Viola. She took all the money, didn't feed the girls, and didn't clean up after them. Viola's vision deteriorated due to the stress. Her eye surgery was postponed, but the guardian refused to pay for it. "God forbid if you complain to anyone. You'll end up where your father did," she yelled furiously. "Now I'm the boss here." Christina and Viola lived with her until April, and one fine day, she came into the girl's room and said, A notary will come today, she glared at her angrily. We will transfer the house into my name. You will have to sign a waiver. I won't sign anything, Christina said loudly. This is our home. You have no right to it. Oh, really? The woman's small eyes darted around. Then I'll send Viola to an orphanage and I'll poison you. You won't do that. The girl shouted. You'll go to jail for this. Fool. They didn't put me in jail for your father's death, she laughed. It was only now that the girl began to understand the true reason behind the tragedy. Christina quickly realized that this woman was capable of anything. Fine, she finally said. But if you do anything to me or Viola, you won't get away with it. Are you threatening me? Aunt Evelina's eyes filled with rage. I'll strangle you with my own hands right now. Christina still didn't know how it would have ended if the woman's phone hadn't rung. Get ready, the notary has arrived, she barked and left her room. That day, the girl signed everything. At night, some people woke her up. They took her and Viola in a car and drove them for a long time. Then they literally dumped them on the street. When it dawned, Viola helped Christina crawl into some basement. There, they settled, and they had been living there for 5 years. Aunt Evelina had taken over all their property. She still received Christina's pension and guardianship payments for Viola. In short, all this time she lived without problems. Christina was shaken. Her entire face was washed with tears. She couldn't sleep this night. Viola, said her sister the next morning, I have a strange premonition. Is something good going to happen? The girl asked cheerfully. You rarely make mistakes. Maybe I'll earn well today? I don't know, she replied, but something good will happen. I can feel it. On that day, Viola was in a good mood, and she read her poems with all her heart. Several people thanked her. 2 others slipped paper money into her pockets. The girl wanted to go home early today. She and Christina had decided that she would bring money home first, and then, when her sister told her how much money she had, the girl would go to the store. Christina understood that Viola was constantly being deceived. It hurt her a lot. The child tried so hard for her, but the salespeople, adults, were simply stealing her money. As Viola walked home, she kept hearing footsteps behind her. There are several of them, she thought. Where can I run away from them? If anything, I'll scream. She hoped that the people would turn in a different direction, but they were walking right behind her. Then Viola thought, whatever will be, will be. She'd rather have these people take everything from her right here than find out where she and Christina lived. The girl was trembling all over. She clutched the bag to her chest and hurried down the basement stairs as quickly as possible. Christina, she whispered softly. Look at what's in this bag. Viola, where did you get this? Her sister exclaimed in amazement. There's money here, a lot of money. What happened? Today, some people were following me, the child said, her voice trembling with fear. I realized that there were 3 of them from their different voices. They were men. They were following me. I got really scared because I thought they wanted to take my money. I decided to give it to them just so they wouldn't find out where we live. But when they approached me, they said they wanted to help me. One of them explained that they were afraid to give me the money in the square because it could have been stolen there. The men apologized for scaring me, gave me this bag, and left. They didn't ask for anything in return, did they? Her sister worriedly inquired. Maybe they said something? Nothing, Viola replied shortly. What should we do now? Let's wait a little while, her sister suggested. Maybe they were some kind of gangsters and wanted to hide their money with us. Viola, take it to a hidden place. If no one shows up within a month, then we'll decide what to do with it. Okay, her sister agreed. I'll hide it under the floorboards here. She opened their hiding place where Christina's golden ring, which their father had given her, was stored, along with a couple of hundreds. Viola, what were their voices like? Christina asked the girl when they went to sleep. Were they angry? You know, I was so scared that I didn't even think about it, Viola replied. It seemed to me that one of them was younger. He had a very pleasant voice, as if from deep inside. One of them was a bit rough, but I felt compassion and care from him too. The third man spoke like a father. He was probably the oldest. At least he loves children. He talked to me as if I were his own child. I didn't sense any anger or anything bad from any of them. Well, the young woman sighed. What does all this mean? She said and remembered her dream. I know he's a good man. He'll take care of you. I've already told him about it, her father said. After these words, Christina calmed down and fell asleep. Is anyone here? Tadeo asked, entering the courtyard of a semi-ruined house. Viola, are you home? There was no answer. The man carefully inspected the remains of the old house. It was empty inside, and it was dangerous to be there. Tadeo was about to leave when he noticed a basement. He cautiously opened the door. Viola, are you here? He called out. It was dark downstairs, so he turned on the flashlight on his phone. The man descended the stairs. Maybe someone used to live here because there were shoes on the floor. Or maybe homeless people used to stay here, he thought to himself. Suddenly, he heard a noise. He went towards it. In the distance, a small window appeared. Viola, don't be afraid, it's me. Do you remember, I wanted to help you with my friends? Tadeo said loudly. The man walked a little further and entered a room. There was silence. He peered through the darkness. It seemed to him that someone moved under some rags. Viola, don't be afraid. I swear to God, I won't do anything bad to you, the man said in desperation. I want to talk to you. Please let me talk to you. A girl's head appeared from under the rags. She had a frightened face. Who are you? The stranger asked in amazement. Sorry, I'm looking for Viola. Do you know where she is? What do you want from us? The girl said through tears. How did you find us? Do you know her? The man exclaimed with joy. I'd like to see Viola, the girl who reads poems. Please, call her. I won't do anything bad to her. Who are you? What do you want from her? The stranger asked. Why do you need her? You see, a few days ago, I and my friends gave her some money, Tadeo began. But I didn't think that maybe she's being held here against her will. Perhaps gypsies stole her, and they are taking the money from her. I don't mind the money I gave, but I wanted to help the child. You know. Tell me, does she have any relatives? You can take your money back, we don't need it, the girl said proudly. But you won't see Viola. Leave us alone. Okay, I'll leave. But please tell me, why are you here? Is someone keeping you here against your will? The man said with concern. No, the stranger replied shortly. Please, don't come here. Tadeo turned around and walked out of the basement. He was so shocked by what he had seen that he could barely make it to his car. Who is this woman or girl, he thought, is she a relative or a mother? How do they even live there? Tears streamed down his cheeks. Tadeo had never been sentimental, but what he had seen squeezed his heart so much that tears flowed from his eyes. All right, I need to calm down. I feel like this isn't the end of it. I'll come back here. For several days, the man regained his composure. He felt drawn to both the girl and the woman. He was eager to find out what had happened to them. 3 days later, Tadeo went to the square. Viola, hello. It's me, he gently said. Do you remember me? How are you? The girl trembled and quickly got up. She didn't know what to do. Please, don't be afraid of me, Tadeo reassured her. I came to your place, but you weren't there. At our place? She asked in amazement. Did you see Christina? Is that the woman by the window? The man asked with interest. Is she your mother? She didn't let me wait for you, so I left. Did you go to our basement? The girl couldn't believe it. Do you know where we live now? Viola, I'm sorry, but I've been following you, he admitted. But I don't want anything from you. I want to help you. What happened to you? Our parents died, and we were kicked out of our house. The girl lowered her head. So, that woman is your sister? Tadeo was surprised. She looks much older than you. Christina is almost 15 years older than me, she calmly replied. What do you want from us? We don't need your money. We haven't even touched it. You mean you haven't spent a single penny of it? He was amazed. Viola shook her head in denial. It was clear that the girl was telling the truth. Well, that's something. Tadeo wiped his face. I'm just in shock. We don't need your money, she replied. We'll manage on our own. Viola, it's not about the money at all, he said. I just don't know how to help you. Then take your money back, the girl suddenly said, and we can be friends. Tadeo was not prepared for such a turn of events. He was simply amazed. To be friends, you don't need unnecessary money, Viola added. Besides, then you won't be able to lie. I agree, the man finally said. For the sake of our friendship, I'm willing to take back my money, but you must give me your word. What kind of word? The child wondered. Do you want me to do something? If we're friends now, allow me to visit you, he said with tenderness, and occasionally give you small gifts. The girl burst into cheerful laughter. Now she felt like it wasn't her who was a little girl, but a little boy stood in front of her. It's a deal, she said, extending her hand. Now we're friends, and we'll strictly fulfill our commitments. Viola happily returned home. She heard her friend walking beside her. They had agreed that today Tadeo would take back his money. Viola, let me get something for a snack, Tadeo asked the girl. She nodded cheerfully. They entered a local store, and an elderly woman appeared behind the counter. Seeing the girl accompanied by a respectable man, the saleswoman straightened up. Good day, what can I do for you? She said joyfully. You must be this girl's relative? I often help her, she couldn't stop talking. If anything, come by. We're always happy to see you. She's acting strange today, the child said in surprise. She never even greeted me. At first, she even kicked me out of the store. Only later did she start serving me. Well, you see what a good friend I am, Tadeo laughed. With me, you won't have any more problems. I'll go in first, Viola requested. I'll explain everything to Christina, and then I'll call you. The girl left, and she was gone for a very long time. Tadeo was about to enter without an invitation, but then the basement door opened, and Viola appeared. Let's go, I told her everything, the girl said contentedly. She's not afraid of you anymore. Tadeo walked into the room he was already familiar with. The girl sat with her back to the window, writing something on an old sheet of paper. Hello, Tadeo said. I'm sorry for coming without an invitation. And if I die today, Christina wrote under her dictation. Just wait a moment. She's inspired now, Viola whispered, so she has to write down her poems. So, it's her poems you read in the square? He exclaimed with enthusiasm. Oh my God. That's hard to believe. Yep, Viola replied quietly and, tapping her stick lightly, walked toward an old table. Hello, the girl suddenly said. Viola told me everything. Take your money. You can even count it if you want. We didn't take anything. Honestly, we don't even know how much was there. You mean you didn't even count it? Tadeo said in shock. There was 200,000 there. How much? The sisters said in unison. I thought maybe it would be enough for you for a while, or you could buy a house in the village, he stammered. Maybe I should leave it after all? Well, no, Christina said in fear. We don't need that kind of money. And besides, you can't buy friendship with money, Viola's voice was heard. I'm sorry, we don't have the best conditions, but if you want, we can have some tea. Thank you, really, but I need some time to think, Tadeo replied and was about to say goodbye. Can I come and visit you later? Of course, you can, Viola said happily. Christina, do you mind? I'm all for it. The girl blushed. She lowered her eyes. Christina didn't know what to say. Christina, I would like to read your poems, he asked the girl, if you don't mind. Christina nodded in agreement. Tadeo asked Viola not to walk him, he could manage on his own. So, my young friend, he took the girl's hand, until we meet again. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Tadeo. I'm sorry. Until we meet again, Tadeo, the child shook his hand. We'll be waiting for you. Viola, what was that? Christina exclaimed in shock after the man left. Who is he? I don't know, the girl shrugged. But there's such warmth about him. I believe him, sis. I'm so scared. I'm afraid to make a mistake, the older sister said nervously. Christina, let's start trusting people again, like adults, Viola replied. Tadeo started visiting the sisters regularly. Dirt and poverty didn't disgust him in the least. His new acquaintances became so dear to him that he began to perceive them as an integral part of his family. So, how's our bet going? Sergio asked one day. You have one more week. Sergio, Vico, I lost on the same day, Tadeo smiled mysteriously. What do you mean? Victor exclaimed in surprise. She hasn't spent all the money yet, has she? They returned every penny to me within a few days, he said contentedly. They? His friends asked in unison. How many were there? They are Viola and her older sister, the man replied calmly. The poems that the girl keeps reading all the time were written by her older sister. Unfortunately, she can't walk, her legs are paralyzed. Well, that's something, Victor scratched his head. So, they really didn't spend a penny? No, he looked his friend in the eyes. I was shocked myself. Viola offered me real friendship in exchange for my money, and I agreed, and I don't regret it at all. I'm truly friends with them, just like with you guys. How old is the older one? Sergei asked with interest. Judging by your shining eyes, there's more than just friendship there, probably. Christina is 25, the man blushed. She's as pure as the blue sky. Well, now everything is clear with you, Victor sang. I guess she's the best girl in the world. Well, I mean, for you. Yes, Tadeo replied briefly. I think I've fallen in love with her, and possibly for a long time, maybe forever. Hallelujah. Sergei raised his hands. Did that really happen? Guys, I don't know what to do, Tadeo suddenly said. How do I get them out of the basement? They might just refuse. What even happened to them? Victor asked excitedly. What's going on with them? Their mother died during Viola's birth. The girl suffered birth trauma, and from birth, she has had a visual impairment. At first, the child saw everything in pieces, like a mosaic, but over time, her vision completely disappeared for some time. The operation was only allowed after 5 years, but by that time, their father's stepsister had moved into their house. Or rather, she was nobody. Senor Diestro's mother drank and one day married another alcoholic like herself. They officially got married, and after that, he informed them that he had a daughter. She turned out to be quite a woman. For many years, she lived her own life, but when her house was taken away due to debts, she remembered that she had a so-called brother once, and as far as I understand, this woman staged an accident and Senor Diestro's car brakes failed. Their father died on the spot. Christina became disabled, and Viola was young and only got away with a broken arm. I think that since she was the only, albeit very distant, contender for the inheritance, the woman was hoping to get everything after their funerals. But it didn't work out for her, so this Aunt Evelina forced Christina to sign a waiver of all property, otherwise she threatened to poison her and send Viola to an orphanage. My God, is this really possible? Victor exclaimed. It's like watching some thriller. Why wasn't she arrested? It's all so obvious. Vico, they didn't want to bother with it, sighed Sergio. They just wrote that the brakes failed due to technical reasons during the trip. You know how many such cases happen. They only investigate when the person is famous, or when there's money involved, or when the relatives keep pressing. So, Tadeo, Vico sighed, we'll get them out. I'll call Senor Montero, a good doctor. Let him take a look at the girls. If they don't want to live with you, we'll rent a simple apartment for them, otherwise they might run away from you. With such women, you need to be careful to bring them back to a normal life. I'm afraid they won't agree, and I don't want to take them forcibly, Tadeo said in frustration. I don't know the right way to handle this. Talk to Christina, Victor suggested. Tell her everything as it is. If the girl means something to you too, she'll agree, and from there, you can either rent them an apartment or marry Christina. I lost my bet, the man said calmly. If anyone becomes my wife, it will be her. I want to break up with Marina completely. Honestly, she's been bothering me for a while now. No wonder, losing such a sack of money, Sergio replied angrily. That woman is cunning. Sergio, forget her, his friend waved his hand. I need to think about Viola and Christina. Have you told your father anything yet? Victor asked curiously. What would Senor Ivora say about this? Yes, I talked to him yesterday, Tadeo replied. He's shocked, of course, but he's not against it. My mother actually wants to take them in. The friends agreed that in a few days, Tadeo would offer his help and new housing to Christina and Viola. On that day, the man was very nervous. Tadeo. Viola shouted happily upon hearing his voice. You came? Will you visit us today? Christina is so looking forward to seeing you, the child said sincerely. Really? He was surprised. Did she say that to you? Yes, she only talks about you, the girl laughed. Do you know what beautiful poems she wrote about you? This time, Tadeo was very embarrassed. He didn't know how to tell them everything. This time, he lacked the courage, and after spending half an hour there, he left. What an idiot! He scolded himself. Lord, I'm like a little boy. I can't even look at her, and my friends called me an experienced ladies' man. And here I am, turns out I'm a coward. Marina had been watching Tadeo for several days. He didn't seem to be looking around much, so she easily found the old abandoned house he entered. She saw him going into the basement through a hole in the fence. What is he doing there? She wondered in amazement. My God, is he hanging out with homeless people? She heard the door creak, and Tadeo quickly headed for the exit. Marina waited for a moment and then entered the basement. What the hell? It smells awful in here. She complained. Is someone living here? Her flashlight illuminated her path, and she entered the far room. Who are you? The woman asked when she saw the girl and the child. What are you doing here? Christina asked in amazement. What do you want? Could Tadeo really sink this low? Marina yelled. Is he sleeping with a rag like you? Who are you? The girl demanded loudly. I'm asking you again, what are you doing here? I'm Tadeo's wife, she said angrily. So, this is who he's cheating on me with. Between us, there has never been anything, and there isn't now, Christina proudly declared. Leave. Do you know who I am? Marina shouted furiously. I'll throw you out of here today. Do you really think Tadeo would go for someone like you? Look at yourself. You talk about him like he's an object, Christina said in amazement. What do you know about life? The stranger yelled in rage. If you were normal, would you live like this? That's right. He's an object, and this object is mine. Do you hear me? I won't give his money to anyone. I think I understand what's going on, Christina calmly said. It's not about Tadeo at all. You just don't care about him. You want his money. Yeah, I don't care about him. He's just a little lapdog in my hands. And I'll destroy you. You'll be taken care of today. Enough, Marina. Tadeo emerged from the adjacent room. You've already said enough. Leave. Tadeo, my love, she flirtatiously approached him. It's just, I love you so much. Get out of here. Tadeo shouted at the top of his lungs. I never want to see you in my life again. Tadeo got into his car and was about to leave, but decided to come back and finally talk to Christina. He could no longer hide anything from her, so he returned and watched what was happening. Let's sit down, Senor Ivora invited the guests to the table. Friends, dear ones, we haven't seen each other for so long. It's been almost 2 years since we planned to spend this evening together, but new events kept popping up. But today, finally, let's remember what has happened during this time and celebrate together. A massive table was set up outside, and the guests started taking their seats. It was June, and the evening brought a slight chill. Since you've entrusted me with this honorary role of being the host today, let me begin, Tadeo's father declared loudly. Sergio, Natalia, let's start with you, my friends. We wholeheartedly congratulate you on the triplets. What you've done is simply miraculous. Vico, there's still a little way to go. 1 more pregnancy and 5 boys to go, Tadeo laughed heartily. I'll be going to their football matches. Senor Ivora, Sergio shouted, for God's sake, make him stop. I probably won't be able to hold back much longer, and I'll hand these 3 over to him. What kind of kids are they? It's just impossible. Look at Vico and Lucia, their twins are so peaceful and quiet, and these 3? He gestured toward the big stroller. They're always up to something, fighting and yelling. It all takes after their dad, Natalia laughed. We know from your parents what you were like in your childhood, they didn't know what to do with you. Well, maybe a few times, Sergio grumbled to himself. Luda, Vico, Senor Ivora continued, you guys are real heroes. After 4 attempts at IVF, you finally achieved your goal. Friends, I wholeheartedly congratulate you on the birth of your twin daughters, Celia and Alicia. Everyone looked at the large stroller. The newborns were peacefully sleeping, undisturbed by the shouts or noise. The babies were smiling in their sleep. Our little girls take after their dad. Isn't that right, my dear? Luda cried tears of joy. Vico finally got what he wished for. Tadeo, Christina, my beloved children, the father couldn't hold back and started crying. I've been waiting for this moment for so long. I had almost given up hope that anyone would ever call me grandpa, but in just a month, I'll be taking care of my first grandson, Jecho. Christina stroked her belly and kissed her husband. Unfortunately, she had a limp after the operation. Due to spine problems, one of her legs was weaker, so she used crutches, but it didn't affect the child. But that's not all, the host continued after taking a sip of water. Friends, one of our country's top publications has released a 3-volume collection of Christina's poems. My girl, they are amazing. He approached his daughter-in-law and kissed her hand as a sign of gratitude. I wrote all the best ones after I met Tadeo, she said. So he's my inspiration and guiding star. And the cherry on top, after a brief pause, Senor Ivora said. Forgive me, I can't help but brag about myself. Viola, my granddaughter, come here. The girl was playing with Sergio's children and quickly ran to her grandpa. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the winner of the all-country junior golf competition, he proudly announced. Viola took second place. She's my hope and joy. I've never met such a clever child. She has beaten me several times already. It's just that Viola not only loves your golf, she adores you even without it, Christina laughed. If only you knew how diligently she prepares for your lessons. Viola's eyesight had been a challenge. She had gone through 3 surgeries. Her vision had been restored, but doctors wanted to monitor her until she was 15 to ensure her complete recovery. Tadeo looked at everyone with happy eyes. He had grown so accustomed to his new life that he couldn't understand how he used to live before. All of this could have never happened, he thought. Because of our stupid bet, my fate was decided. Yes, back then, we looked like arrogant kids who looked down on ordinary people. We thought money solved everything, but I'm so glad I was able to change. Now, I have my long-awaited family, and most importantly, I've learned that I'm capable of truly loving.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.